morning, children. Today we shall learn about plant sexual reproduction.
The new plant generally grows from a seed. But have you wondered how? As we know, the flower turns into a fruit. Now we also know that the insects help in pollination, that is transferring of pollen grains from the anther part of the male organ, which is the stamen, to the stigma part of the female organ, which is the pistil. You know, if the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. And then the pollens are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of the same kind. It is called cross-pollination. As we saw, the pollination happens due to the external agents such as a bee, which is an insect. Other than insects, wind, water also help in the pollination. Hence, all of these are called the agents of pollination. The insects visit the flowers for nectar and transfer the pollens to the stigma. Generally, the insects' pollinated flowers are brightly colored, have sweet smell. They are also sucks the nectar. Some plants have small flowers and the petals are not brightly colored. They do not produce nectar. The pollen grains are very light in weight and hence easily blown by wind. So the wind is the agent of pollination. For example, in the case of the wheat, maize or rice, and etc. And certain aquatic plants like the seagrass, the pollination is carried out by the water, as the water current slowly carries the pollen grains to the other flowers. You know, even few small birds like sunbirds or the hummingbirds, which have smaller beaks, pollinate the flowers. Few bats and robins also pollinate the flowers. Now let us see what exactly happens after the pollination. As we saw, after the pollination, the ovary swells up and becomes fruit, and the ovule inside the ovary will become a seed. The new plant develops from the embryo inside the seed. This embryo develops from a single-cell zygote. The zygote develops into the embryo. Then embryo develops into the baby plant. So all such of a single-cell zygote. Let us see how the zygote starting from the very beginning. A bee came and dropped the pollen grain in the stigma. Hence, the pollination is done. For the pollination, the pollen grains need to be transferred to the stigma. But why? The pollen grains consist of one kind of gamete cell and another kind of gamete resides inside the ovules. If the pollen lands on the stigma of the right type of flower, the stigma secretes some nutrients. The pollen grains absorbs this and starts growing. A thin tube grows out of the pollen grain. A tube keeps growing, carrying the male gamete, and it grows until it reaches the ovary. The tube reaches the ovary and then it enters inside the ovule and releases a male gamete inside it. When the male gametes and female fuse together to form a zygote. So when the two different types of gametes self-fuse, the zygote is formed, and this zygote falls into an embryo. As the pollen grain comes from the male part of the flower, it consists of the male gamete, and the ovule consists of the female gamete. This process of fusion of male gamete and female gamete to form a zygote is called fertilization. The zygote is formed due to the fertilization. Then the zygote develops into an embryo. then embryo into the baby plant. This type of plant reproduction process is called sexual reproduction. So, in the sexual reproduction of plants, the gametes participate and the zygote is formed after the fusion of male and female gametes. You know, in certain plants, for example, the hibiscus plant or gomamilla, the same flower has both of male and female gamete. Hence, the flower is called the bisexual flower or the complete flower. While in other plants, for example, pumpkin, cone, papaya, and etc., the flower has either the male gamete or the female gamete, and so the flower is called the unisexual flower or the incomplete flower. So this is how plants reproduce through the seeds.
That's all for now. I hope you have learned something today. But before we will end our session, let us all answer the following questions.